This is the Dr. Pi channel, and welcome to our Semiconductor Industry Weekly Review, Validated End User, VEU, and Chip War. Today we're diving into the high-stakes connection between a cryptic government acronym, VEU, and the global chip war. And interestingly, it's a story that really starts not with policy, but with a surprising paradox right at the heart of the AI revolution.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll tackle the AI productivity paradox. Then we'll get into the VU takedown itself and break down exactly what a VU is. After that, we'll look at the proposed annual license compromise, and finally, we'll zoom out to see the bigger fallout from the chip war.
All right, let's kick things off with the central tension that's really shaking up the industry right now. You have this massive, multi-trillion-dollar bet on artificial intelligence, but it's crashing right into a very surprising reality. For some of its most important users, it's just not making them any more productive. I know, it sounds a little crazy, doesn't it? Is the AI revolution actually making us slower? It's a provocative question for sure, but it's one we absolutely have to ask. Why? Because new research is directly challenging this whole narrative that AI is some kind of magic efficiency button. In fact, for some of the most skilled people out there, it might be doing the exact opposite. And the scale of this disconnect is just staggering. On one hand, you've got big tech set to pour $560 billion into AI capital spending, and that's just since the start of 2024. But on the other hand, you have a serious study that found for highly experienced software developers, we're talking the pros, these very same AI tools actually made them 19% slower. Slower! It's kind of mind-blowing. So what in the world is going on here? How is that even possible? Well, it boils down to something called the capability-reliability gap. Basically, AI can do some incredible things, but it often messes up in subtle ways. And the time experts spend finding and fixing those sneaky mistakes can completely wipe out any time they saved. I think one developer in the study just nailed the frustration perfectly, calling it the digital equivalent of shoulder surfing an overconfident junior developer. So keep that paradox in mind. If the world's biggest companies are struggling to make AI reliable, you can bet the US government is getting nervous about who has access to the cutting-edge hardware that powers it all. And that brings us right to our next section, a major policy shift called the VEU Takedown. Here's the headline news. The US government has just revoked the Validated End User, that's VEU, status for major semiconductor facilities in China. Now, let me be clear. This is not a minor tweak in the rules. This is a fundamental change in how these massive companies get their hands on critical US technology. And look who's on this list. We are not talking about small players here. This is affecting some of the heaviest hitters in the entire industry. Intel's huge facility in Dalian, Samsung China Semiconductor, and SK hynix operations in China. These are globally significant, massive operations. Now, this whole policy hinges on that three-letter acronym, VUU. I know it sounds like some obscure government speak, and, well, it is. But understanding it is absolutely critical if you want to grasp just how high the stakes are here. So let's demystify this thing. What exactly is the Validated End User Program? Okay, the easiest way to think about VEU status is like TSA PreCheck or Global Entry, but for high-tech trade. If you were a VEU, the US government essentially put you on a trusted list. You got a blanket authorization to receive certain US technologies, which meant you didn't have to go through the slow, painful process of applying for a specific license for every single shipment. And getting this status was a really big deal. First, a company had to pass a super tough review by multiple US government agencies. Then, they had to formally promise that every single item they got would be used for civilian purposes only. And finally, they had to agree to let the US government come in for on-site inspections. The whole program was built on this foundation of verified trust, making trade way faster and more predictable. So now that this trust-based VEU system is being taken away from these key players, Washington is kind of scrambling to figure out what's next. So let's take a look at the solution they've put on the table, what's been called the annual license compromise. And the change here is just night and day. You're going from the VUE system, a permanent trust-based green light, to this proposed annual site license. What does that mean? It means every single year, these companies have to submit a super detailed application forecasting the exact quantity of every restricted part they'll need for the next 12 months. We're going from long-term trust to intense yearly scrutiny. And you can probably guess, this is causing some major heartburn in the industry. Officials are basically asking,
How can we predict the unpredictable? Imagine trying to forecast exactly which spare parts you'll need for emergency repairs a whole year in advance. If a critical machine goes down and you need a component that's not on your list, you could be looking at a production shutdown. That's a massive business risk. So that begs the question, why make a change that creates so much risk and friction for business? To understand that, we have to zoom out and look at the bigger picture of the chip war. This isn't just about licensing paperwork. It's about the US making a strategic move to tighten its grip on the entire global semiconductor supply chain. And a huge piece of this puzzle is material called polysilicon. This is the ultra-pure stuff that you need to make the semiconductor wafers in the first place. And get this, according to the data, China already controls about 75% of global production. 3/4. When one country has that much control over a critical raw material, it creates a major supply chain choke point. And that has US policymakers very, very concerned. So how did this happen? Well, reports detail the playbook pretty clearly. Massive financial subsidies and tax breaks, access to incredibly cheap power. We're talking just 3 cents per kilowatt hour in some areas versus 8 cents in the US, plus getting land below market prices and using state-sponsored labor programs. It's exactly this kind of state-backed competition that US export controls are now designed to counter. And the financial stakes involved in all of this are just almost impossible to wrap your head around. One source estimates there's a $7 trillion cash wall from investors, all just sitting on the sidelines, waiting for the right moment to pour into the AI and semiconductor boom. With that kind of capital in play, every policy shift, every new regulation, every supply chain disruption we've talked about, it creates massive ripple effects across the entire global economy. Which brings us to the crucial question we have to leave you with. Right now, we are watching supply chains actively fracture and new, more restrictive regulations pop up in real time. So, is this it? Is this the definitive end of the era of frictionless global technology? That's a question every single investor and company in this space has to confront right now. Thank you for tuning in to the Dr. Pi channel. Stay with us for more, and don't forget to hit that like button and share this with your network.